You're listening to Art Affairs, episode 58. Today I'll be talking to Casey Weldon. Alright, so my name is Michael Faith, and this is Art Affairs. Art Affairs is my attempt at shining a spotlight on the many wonderful people that make up this amazing art community, featuring conversations with artists, gallerists, curators, telling their stories. You can dig through previous episodes, complete with show notes, at artaffairs.podcast.com, but the best way to stay plugged in is to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're really enjoying the show and want to help support what I'm doing here in an even bigger way, check out the Art Affairs Patreon. Not only does it give you an opportunity to help keep the show going, but there are several community-oriented benefits as well, like getting early access to episodes and suggesting questions for upcoming guests. You can find all the information about that at patreon.com/artaffairs. You can also connect with the show on Instagram and Facebook at Art Affairs Podcast. All right, so today's guest is artist Casey Weldon. Casey was actually suggested by two previous guests, both Mike Egan and Alex Garant. So it was really good to finally have him on. His work is super interesting, and his use of color is incredibly unique. We talk about his haunting color palette on the show, as well as how he first got started showing in galleries in Las Vegas, his new solo show at ThinkSpace, and a whole lot more. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Casey Weldon. Casey, welcome to the show, man. It's good to have you on.
Thanks. Thank you for having me.
All right, awesome. And shout out to Mike Egan and Alex Garant. Whenever I ask at the end of the show who they'd most like to have on, they both suggested you. So that was pretty cool.
Aw, that's nice of them. Both very sweet people.
All right, so let's dive into your background. And from what I understand, you were born and grew up in the Valencia area of Santa Clarita, California, which, according to Google Maps, puts it relatively close to LA. But I don't really know the Los Angeles geography. So, what was the area like where you grew up?
Yeah, it's the valley beyond the valley of Los Angeles. It's home to Magic Mountain, Six Flags, and CalArts. And it's just super suburbia. I mean, okay. I believe at one point they just rebranded their name Awesome Town, which buses have that. It is not an awesome town, but it's very nice, very safe, and very isolated, I guess.
Okay. So is it, did they keep that? Is that an actual thing? Awesome Town?
I don't know. This was probably about 4 years ago. I can't imagine that was a successful campaign, but who knows, My brother still lives there. I just, it hasn't come up.
Okay, right on. What kind of work did your parents do when you were growing up?
My mom was a career school teacher of all grades, and my dad was a computer systems consultant. It's one of these jobs that no one will ever understand. I don't think I do. But yeah, he'd just kind of go into companies and help them rebuild their computer systems, and then moved into a more management consultant. Yeah.
Awesome. And were you exposed much to the arts as a kid? Is it something you had around you at home?
Not too much. I mean, my mom is pretty creative. I think most school teachers have to be. And they were definitely supportive of it. But I think most of art influences came in through comic books and cartoons and, the normal stuff kids get into.
Sure. So is that what's kind of sparked your interest in creating art yourself, or was there some other thing?
Yeah, I think I was always pretty artistic as a kid, and then once I discovered comic books, it was over, Yeah, a lot of Todd McFarlane and Ninja Turtle copies in my early years, and
So is that like Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man or Todd McFarlane's Spawn? And that's
I was right at the sweet spot where I found him when he was doing Spider-Man, and that was right around when Image Comics started, and got into all these artists that were amazing at drawing. Not so much at storytelling, but it was I don't remember actually reading them too much. It was just all about examining their styles and trying to recreate them.
Sure. And so when that sort of sparked your own interest in art, did that cause you to want to tell stories with your work? Did that give you sort of a natural like narrative slant?
I don't know. I know, in high school is like kind of a stoner dropout. I was just drawing. I was just looking through some old sketchbooks, and they're all just like busty anime babes and like muscular anti-hero types. And it wasn't. I don't think there was too much of a story behind anything. It was just kind of, regurgitation and just, trying to draw trippy things. A lot of pretty girls sitting on mushrooms.
And you mentioned a brother. Is he creative at all as well? Or was it just you that was the creative one in the family?
We used to draw, he could still draw a pretty mean Ninja Turtle. And I think that's about all he will draw. He's a structural engineer in downtown Los Angeles. And so, there is this kind of running joke where I'm the artsy one and he's the, mathematical guy, but we're pretty similar people. And, reluctant to say that he's not creative because I think the job that he has requires a lot of creativity, but it's just a different type.
Sure. No, that makes sense. And I guess, growing up, you mentioned you're kind of the stoner kid in high school, but did you already kind of know that you wanted to be an artist professionally? Like, was that what you were aiming for?
I think that was just what I was told I was going to be over and over again. I mean, I started high school just not even interested in every piece of homework was littered with doodles and maybe not so much actual work, but I didn't have any like preconceived notion that I was going to be an artist. I just didn't really know what else I was going to do.
So what motivated the decision to go to Art Center?
So after kind of turning things around midway through high school, getting my act together, I really got into it. I mean, throughout high school, I was doing some more art jobs, and I guess you could even call them illustration jobs, drawing like rave flyers and painting props for raves, which is a thing that exists. And I think I started to take it a little bit more seriously. I didn't really have any other interest other than, painting and drawing still at that time. And while my parents were supportive of me going to art school, they didn't necessarily want me to go straight out of high school. It's terribly expensive, and it's not really something you want to push someone into if they're still kind of wishy-washy about their direction. And so I went to community college for a couple of years and got like an associate's degree and something I could fall back on. And after that, decided, to go to Art Center.
Why Art Center? What attracted you there?
I lived right down the street from CalArts, and even had when I was a kid, there was a college student that was living with us that was going to CalArts, and he was just the coolest guy. He would take us up there all the time. During the high school days, we kind of snuck up in there to the parties often, and the more I went there, the more it's a great school, but besides animation, I feel like their art department leads a little bit more on the conceptual, higher brow, or I don't know what term you use now, but it wasn't for me. Otis looked great, but Art Center just had the the instructors that I was aware of and that I really admired, and past students that went there. And it seemed like a school that was about learning how to draw and paint, learning about the craft of it a little bit more than maybe some of the other schools.
Awesome. And was your focus was painting and drawing there?
Yeah, it was the illustration program, which is basically their painting and drawing program. I think it's diversified a little bit now. There was a fine arts department. I'm sure there still is, but illustration was about, learning how to draw good.
Right. And so I guess looking back, like, how do you feel about your time in art school? Do you feel that it was a fulfilling experience? Did it help you kind of grow in the way that you needed?
Yeah, I wish I took advantage of it a little bit more. Coming from the area, I was still kind of going back to my old town and hanging out with my old friends. Whereas I think a lot of people that moved in from out of state or out of country were kind of, forced to like immersify themselves into the social aspect of it, where I, naturally being shy, just kind of kept to myself a little bit more. And all the teachers that I had there were so great and so like willing to tell you anything you want to know, but you just have to ask. And I don't know, I guess I wish I had asked a little bit more. But as far as the school goes, I know I see my work before I went there and after I came out. It's quite a difference.
I mean, I guess, is it something that you would recommend to somebody that's considering art school today?
I do. Again, I think it's like definitely something you have to be absolutely sure about. I wonder about some of the people that I went to school with, like where they are now. I know some of them are superstars. And I think a lot of people used it to go into like arts adjacent type. And then there's some people that I just didn't even know what they were doing there. They didn't seem interested in doing the work, and I don't know. So I think it's good for people that are serious about doing it, but it's just so expensive. I don't, that's my biggest gripe about it. I wish that wasn't a factor. Well,
and I'm sure it's that much more expensive now than when you were there too,
Yeah. I don't even want to look at it.
So you graduated in 2004, and after graduation, is that when you moved to Las Vegas? Because I know you spent quite a bit of time there.
Yeah, it was like I had a lot of friends that lived out there, and I mean, people were buying houses for 80 grand or something. And as a broke ass college student, like living in LA, trying to start my own business or trying to make money at being an artist it just didn't seem like an option. And I had visited Vegas often, and they had quite like a blossoming art scene, and it seemed like a good choice. I could go up there, live for cheap, and try to get things going.
So it had more to do with just the cost of living and it being more reasonable.
Yeah. And I don't think people realize that there is like a city beyond the egg yolk that is the Strip, while it is dependent on the entertainment industry. I think there's a lot more to Las Vegas than people give credit to.
Okay, and that was what I was curious about, because like in my head, I've never been to Las Vegas, so like in my head, when somebody's talking about Las Vegas, I literally just picture a single street with a bunch of casinos on it. Like that's in my head what I picture Las Vegas to be, but I'm sure it's more than that.
Yeah, I mean that would have been accurate maybe in like the 50s. But it's slowly spreading out like any other city. It is, it's very similar to like any other desert town that you've been to. I mean, like Phoenix, not too far away. I don't know. I feel like they got the same vibes on a much smaller scale. Like Phoenix is gigantic, but
What about the art scene? Was it a pretty active art scene in Vegas while you were there?
Yeah, a lot of support. There's a downtown area where like what they call it, the Arts Factory, with a lot of artist studios in it, and then they would have an art walk every first Friday of the month, and the city would shut down the streets. They would have this big art walk with booths and vendors. They still do. It's gotten a little bit more commercial since then, or at least that's like the gripe that a lot of local artists have about it. But at the time, it was great. I could have a show and get my work seen by a bunch of people. They weren't necessarily coming for my work, but at least they were seeing it. And it was really supportive. Met a lot of friends that I'm still friends with today. So.
Awesome. Very cool. So like when you first got there, what kind of work were you doing right out of college? Did you dive right into your own art practice, or did you spend some time on like commercial stuff?
Well, I mean, the goal was to get into the illustration game, but it's one thing that came up through art school in the illustration program over and over again is that we were all preparing for like a dying career. Illustration's been dying forever, I guess, is like photography and just Photoshop and just taken over, but that I still wanted to do it. I love the idea of it. And that was my plan, but I got offered a show in this like tiny little gallery and sold some work out of it. And then from then on, just kind of did a little half and half, tried to do some illustration work wherever I could get it, but then also creating my own paintings and see if I could sell those too.
So, I mean, you mentioned that you started showing your work, in the Las Vegas area. How did that happen? How did that come about that you started showing, and like, how did you start making some of those relationships with galleries?
There's a guy named Iceberg Slick, and he had a little gallery in this Arts Factory building, and I had come out and visited and showed him some work, and he's like, yeah, puts them up. It wasn't a big thing. And him and a lot of people with other galleries were really kind of trying to make it a scene and doing a pretty good job at it. And so having like a show or two there. I mean, these were all small galleries that people, I don't know. Vegas is very like localized, where I feel like everyone in the area knows everyone else, but maybe doesn't focus too much on the outside art world, I guess. So it's like, it's very specific. That was my observation, at least. I could be totally wrong. But like, then there was a gallery, Trifecta Gallery with Marty Walsh that kind of started making big moves, getting some artists from outside, some artists that, I think people would recognize, like Amy Soul was like a local Vegas. And I actually met her while she was still doing like abstract work
oh, nice.
Through Iceberg Slick in that group. And Marty would show like Kathy Olivius and Eric Joyner, and so it was just, you show at one gallery, then you show at another, and
starts building.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Very cool. I didn't know Amy lived in Las Vegas at some point.
Yeah, I think she was born and raised. She lives here now.
Okay.
Yeah. This was like 2004, and I think she was living here, and she's been living in San Francisco for the last 10 years or something, but she's back.
Right on. And so how long did you live in Vegas?
Then it was only 3 years. It was 2004, 2007.
And it seems like after Vegas, in general, you've lived in a lot of places. Like you lived in Brooklyn, you went back to California, Portland, Seattle for a while, I guess.
Yeah.
Why? I guess what motivated all that moving around?
Let's see. I was living in Vegas. Art was it was doing well enough. But I was dating a woman that lived in San Francisco, going to school for fashion design. And, we got the bright idea to move out to New York because that's where she had to get a job. And people told me, oh man, if you're going to be an artist, you gotta, live in New York. And that is not true. So yeah, we moved out there. And I think during that time, weirdly, I was starting to get into like more recognizable galleries, but they were all on the West Coast. Did like some East Coast shows here and there. I feel like I was just constantly mailing things across the country. And yeah, after living there for 4 years, moved back to Los Angeles to try to figure out what to do. And then ended up moving to Seattle. I actually never lived in Portland. I don't know why so many bios say that.
Yeah.
I've never claimed it. I don't know. I don't know where it came from. I love Portland. I wanted to move there at one point, but never actually lived there.
And so you moved back to Las Vegas then from Seattle? You're not in Seattle anymore?
No, I just, I think we're coming up on a year. I'm back living in Las Vegas, after living in Seattle for 8 years. Yeah.
I guess, how have you seen it change from when you lived there before?
The kind of downtown area where they did the arts district is like, now there's, bars and restaurants where it used to be kind of more, auto body shops and that would hang art in there on First Fridays. And so it's a little bit more built up. It went through a period, I think, where most cities did, where there was this move back into city areas, get out of the suburbs. So it's seen a little bit of that, not as much as the other cities I've lived in, but yeah. It's pretty nice. I still have some lifelong friends here, so it's kind of just about hanging out in their backyards and hanging out with their kids and swimming. And so again, I don't know too much about the scene here.
Is that home now? Do you think you'll stay?
No. After living in like this shit box of an apartment in Capitol Hill, Seattle for 8 years, I needed like more space. And it's just so expensive to live anywhere remotely close to downtown and also have space in Seattle. And coincidentally, all my friends that bought one house when they were, 21 years old are all buying their second houses now. And my friends had this great property downtown, and their intent was to use it as like a Airbnb for tattoo artists that would come into town, could live and work out of. And COVID shut that down. So it was just kind of sitting here. They asked if I wanted to live here, and yeah, it's been awesome. I live in a house now after 20 years in apartments. Yeah.
Very cool. Awesome. And so as you were, moving around as much as you did and your career continued to progress, you obviously made some pretty strong relationships with several galleries, including Spoke Art and Think Space, where your latest show is going to be at. And of course, Ken and Andrew have both been on the show in the past. Is having a strong relationship with a gallery or a couple of galleries, like in this case, an important component of your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Ken, I've known since the first show he had, the first like Wes Anderson show. And And the pieces I did for that got really popular, and then have had successful group and solo shows with him ever since. And definitely someone I would call a friend. He's let me stay at his house when he's not there, or even when he is there. And is just a super sweet guy. Andrew's amazing. The whole team at Think Space are great people and very tolerant of the bullshit that I give them. And Kirsten at Rock LaRue has always been amazingly supportive, and the couple at Antler, I fucking love them, Neil and Susanna. So yeah, I mean, it's always interesting telling people that don't know how selling art works. My friends, how you tell them about like commission breakdowns, and they're like, "What? The gallery's just going to take your money?" I'm like, you have to understand they are also doing a lot of work and putting a lot of faith in what you're doing to live off of, and so yeah, it is definitely important to have a relationship with those people to know that they are actually going to, push your work and support, but also like be supportive of you when you're mentally breaking down a week before the show. So yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of it, and this is something that Andrew and I talked about too on our episode, is just finding the galleries that do the work, that really put in the hard work to back you, because there are galleries that don't, out there, and it's a matter of kind of aligning yourself with the ones that do really.
Absolutely.
And all the ones that you named, I think, are great examples of those types of galleries.
Yeah. I mean, it is like alluring to someone trying to make money. Like, oh, what? I don't have to put any money down on inventory, and I get half of whatever sells. All I have to do is rent a space up. No problem. I'm like, yeah. A little bit more work, and you could tell they come in and they go, and that is unfortunately like this obstacle course that every like artist has to go through, of like, because you're so excited to get a show, any kind of like group show, whatever, and a lot of people just get taken advantage of by these people that are just doing, they'll sell your work. Maybe you'll get a check, or maybe they won't, and you won't get your piece back because they have to realize they have to like cover shipping. And yeah, I think a lot of people start galleries not knowing exactly what they're getting themselves into.
Is that something that you had to navigate yourself?
For sure. Yeah. Mm. I've had, work disappear, checks never come, a lot of excuses given. I'm sure it's still happening. I mean, I know there's a lot of great stories about, even in the big time, there's big time galleries that are, terrible people behind them. So, and maybe not even terrible, but just people that are just like, they just got in over their heads and they don't know how to get out, and they are not great at talking to people about it. So they just
Sure. So let's talk about the work itself. And I think one of the most recognizable things, at least to me, is your use of color. Like, that's the thing that stands out to me the most. And I think I see haunting used a lot to describe the way that you use color, which I don't know that that's what I would have chosen, but I think it is interesting the way you have both bright and dark at the same time, which I don't fully know how to articulate, but like, there's obviously a lot of shadows and a lot of darkness, but then you'll have these bright elements as well. But even the bright elements are like really deep and almost dark themselves. So I guess help me understand your use of color and how that came about, and is there any particular like meaning behind the way that you use color?
So I think when I first started painting and I saw like the rack at your local art store of every color under the sun and like the acrylic section, or I guess any section, I just wanted to buy them all and use all those colors. And then your paintings end up looking like a mess, and kind of noticed that like just every piece was, wildly different from the other. And at some point, decided that it would be a good idea to try to limit my palette. You could still be colorful, but you don't have to use every color. So, I started just getting down to like 6 or 7 basic colors and seeing what I can do with that. Focus on that before you start broadening your palette. And yeah, as far as the lighting goes, I think there was like a phase of everything had to be glowing, which I like. I mean, I am fascinated by lighting. I cannot stand to be in a room with fluorescent overhanging lights, as that's the way I grew up. My dad loved it. Everything was fluorescent light, and still is at his house. Now they're LEDs, but they're just that. Yeah. And so lighting scenarios, ambient kind of, have always been super interesting to me, and trying to recreate that on a canvas could be some hard work, I think a lot of people's natural assumption is that, if that thing's glowing, then make it bright as hell, but
Right.
to realize you have to make everything else dark, and it's not really the color that's bright. It's just that everything else is, darker. So
Yeah. And that's what's, I think, fascinating, because a lot of the times the light is out of frame, so it's casting light on the characters of the subjects, and it feels bright, but when you really look at it, it's like it's not really that bright. It's just a lot of other stuff around it are really dark, but it feels bright, which is a weird sensation, I think.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. I mean, I definitely, yeah. Like I said, I like multi-light sources, and trying to figure out where they're coming from, and they'll usually be like a focal point glowing flamingo or some shit. But then, you want 3 or 4 other light sources, come in strange areas. So, yeah.
I guess besides the recognition where you're like, hey, I don't need to use all the colors, let me limit my palette, I guess how else have you seen your use of color evolve over the years?
Well, I think it's safe to say I'm a fan of pink and cyan.
Sure.
Can't get out of those, but have been trying to like deepen that a little bit. Sometimes things just happen, and it's not always like a conscious decision. It's just one painting comes out that way, and you're like, oh, I really like that, and you just start exploring it. And yeah, I would say most of my career has been haphazard. So yeah, it's not really a clear direction.
Right on. And I guess thematically, I think it's interesting because your work often will have this really cool interplay between like feelings of melancholy, but also like humor and wit, almost kind of like satire mixed into it. So I guess where do you think that that kind of unique combination of melancholy humor comes from?
I don't know. I know I've grown up with funny friends, and humor's been a big part of my life, as most people would agree. Like, tragedy's there too, and I don't know. I don't think I know a single person that can't laugh at something terrible that's happened to them.
Sure, yeah.
And so that's always been an interest. I've been telling dad jokes before they were called dad jokes. And so I think most paintings start with like either a straight up, like, this would be funny, or just kind of, there's always like a punchline to it, like, oh, what if this was this, and then, okay, that's cool. And you can do that painting, but how do you make it more interesting from there? Like, how do you add like another layer to it? How do you hopefully like push that joke into like a second or third read, and so have it a very pretty and interesting scene, but then you get to like that, oh, okay, and I think that comes from like what a lot of the teachers at Art Center were pushing. It was like a very illustration approach to things. Like, read the article. If it's about economics, do not, ever use a bag with a dollar sign on it. Or, it's about trying to find interesting symbolism that people can identify with, but hopefully hasn't been used to death so far.
Sure.
So yeah, at least by other people, I tend to use the same things over and over again. But yeah.
Do you consider your work like narrative in nature, or like are you trying to tell stories through some of your pieces?
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying. I want it to be a scene that you can that you're peeking into and not necessarily participating in. I almost never want the subjects like looking at the viewer, unless there's just a lot of different work. I know everything I say is going to be immediately contradicted by some other painting that I've done. So, I want it to be a scene. And then you check out this caterpillar with no other background. But yeah, it's I want it to be weird enough to find that the viewer will be interested in exploring it more and not just completely write it off after 5 minutes of looking at it.
Sure. I guess do you want the works to participate with one another in some way, like in a kind of cohesive through line? Is that a part of what
sometimes? Yeah. There's definitely like series where it's like maybe an elaboration idea 2 or 3 times. Not necessarily like a straight up children's book style of like what's happening from one scene to the other, but I do think that they're all in like the same kind of world, maybe. Yeah.
And you mentioned cats, and obviously cats have been a big part of your work for a while now, especially the 4-eyed variety. I guess what's the origin of that motif, and when did you start doing that?
The 4-eyed cat specifically, I'm trying to think of when that was. That was a show at Spoke Art, but it was I had done a series of paintings for a show that were all based off of names that kids get called, and one of them was 4 Eyes, and so they were like done in literal ways. Like I got called Walrus Teeth because I was missing teeth as a child. And so, with kid with tusks, but obviously the kid with 4 eyes, was popular because of that visual kind of, vibrating effect. And, I'd done a series, I guess that was like 2010 now. That's when I was moving out of, New York, 2010, 11. And it's just funny. You take this, like, everybody loves to look at the cute little cat, and to make it physically hard to look at is like a kind of a shitty thing to do to somebody, but made a whole career out of it.
Sure. I mean, it is. I mean, I think it depends on the person, but it is hard to like focus in on their eyes.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, because, half of a cat's face is their eyes. They're pretty, and yeah, I just really enjoyed it, and I could start doing my friends' cats. I tried to include all the cats that I knew, or even just put out open calls on Instagram or something.
I guess do cats like represent something specific in your works? Like I know you use symbolism a lot, and you said you like to use a lot of the same symbols. Do they represent something?
I just think they're an excellent subject of someone that is trying to look really cool and then will do something derpy, so I think that's interesting. I think they are subject that isn't a person that everyone can immediately identify with, a whole lot of attitude. And so I grew up with cats and have lived with cats half of my life. There's nothing special or significant about them. I just think they're fun, Do
you have any right now? Do you have any cats?
There's something crazy going on here. So, when I moved in, there was a Siamese cat that was living in the crawl space underneath. And this guy was he was a beater, like he was tough as nails. And he unfortunately passed away. And
Uh-huh.
since then, all the cats are coming. They're
Oh
all
wow.
like, it's like Game of Thrones, man. They're trying to figure out who's going to rule the kingdom underneath. And one of them, who I've named Sombra, is this big fat black cat who's just incredibly sweet. So she comes in and we'll hang out. The rest are definitely feral and
Mm.
keep their distance, but I'm feeding the whole neighborhood. So I think we're up to like 4 regulars,
Nice.
that I'll see on a semi daily basis.
You're in the cat lady phase of your life.
Yeah, they don't come in the house except for the one, because she's chill. The other ones, I don't know what they're up to, and I'm not interested in finding out. At least not right now. And so yeah, I think it's kind of fun. They keep the rats away. I'm assuming. I don't know if that's a problem here, but it's not for me.
What are some other prominent symbols that you've used over the years?
I'm trying to. I mean, it's kind of like a piece by piece thing, and I don't know. It's bad artist thing that I can't think of it off the top of my head. But I mean, there's a difference between symbolism and subject, and like I would never call the cat a symbol, even though I probably just did 15 minutes ago. They're they're usually more of the subject. It's kind of the little things going around. Like there's a painting behind me in the show. You could probably hardly see it, but it's like a woman braiding her hair, and she's got these guys in leather jackets with monster masks on, and then if you look at it, they all have their tongues out, and she's actually braiding their tongues and not their and not her hair. And so that's, to me, like it's based on a friend that's had like, just the worst luck with dating world, and everyone's kind of like this tough guy. And I know a mask is a pretty like literal or not literal, but like it's overused. But it's just everyone's trying to be a cool guy and speaking this language to try to pick someone up, and this woman's just kind of gone on and on and on, and like just verbally eviscerating them. So yeah, maybe not the best example. I'll have like half of an idea ready to go when I start painting a painting, and as going like, oh, it would be cool if this was in there because it would be weird and unexpected, and what will that mean? The painting next to it is like this woman in kind of like a fur hat looking thing, but it's actually flamingos, and she's looking at a smaller version of herself resting on her hand, dressed in swimwear. And then if you look at her freckles, I mean, obviously can't see them there, but they're all tiny flowers from like a Hawaiian floral print. And so the whole idea behind that painting is it's called Snowbird. And it's just everyone I knew in Seattle like wanting to be south for the winter because it's so miserable, and it's like when February comes around, it's about what anyone can talk about. So it's not, heavy stuff, but it's just like, yeah, it's about wanting to be on vacation. She wants to be on vacation so much, it's coming out on her face, And
no, that's really cool. And so I guess how do you tend to arrive at your ideas for pieces? Do you or for like a complete body of work, if you're doing a whole series, do you have any kind of like intentional brainstorming activities that you go about, or is it just all kind of come to you?
Yeah, it's it comes out of nowhere. Yeah, I have like iPhone notes. I think a lot of artists probably do that. Just read like complete gibberish haikus, and yeah, I don't. You're just thinking. It's the hardest question to ever answer because there's never like a good one. It's just like it just happens.
What Once you do have like a solid idea for a piece, like how do you approach developing the composition for it? Do you start with like pencil drawings and then go into paint, or do you just jump right into painting?
Lots of thumbnails. Yeah. Start with thumbnails. Kind of get the general idea. There's usually like a vision of what it is going to look like, or at least like a hazy kind of idea. And, you start gathering photo references of whatever subject matter is in there. I'll assemble things in Photoshop and just create like a photo collage that has reference and like a general layout of what things are going to look like. On top of that, start drawing things, changing the color. Like I'm not the biggest fan of taking photo reference lit the way that I want it to be lit. That's usually just made up, just because it's just not going to happen. I'm just lazy and you can figure it out. We'll take a photo shoot with someone nice enough to model and just have like a library of images and just like, oh, maybe this one will work. And you can start kind of collaging and rearranging their poses, rearranging the lighting. And then from then on, you start painting. Yeah. So it's pretty nailed down by the time the painting process starts.
So for the photo shoots, do you have a good idea of what you want to come out of the photo shoot with when you first start, as far as like poses and lighting, stuff like that?
No, it's usually really broad, and it's not for like a specific painting. It's just to do it so that I have it, and usually make poor people like do this kind of weird Tai Chi thing. Like, okay, just have your hands up and pretend that you're sad looking at, you're holding a weird thing, and kind of move around them. So you just kind of do as much as you can with, as many people as you can. And if it doesn't work out, like if you have a very specific idea of what you want to do, and the poses that you have aren't just doing it, you can kind of go back and see if you can get something a little bit more specific. But that rarely ever happens. Just expediency is what I need.
Does it matter if you know the people that are modeling for you? Does that help at all, or does that not really play into what you're doing?
No. No, I put out like calls before, like, hey, does anyone want to model for me? I've modeled or I've never modeled for anybody. I've had models be friends and, ex-partners. And if you're going to paint someone, you got to make sure that they are okay with how it's going to come out.
Sure.
That's, you definitely don't want someone that is going to keep telling you to make them look younger and prettier. Whatever.
I guess once you do start painting, do you typically work entirely on that one piece until it's done, or do you work on multiple pieces at once?
Usually, unless it's for a show, like a group show with a deadline, then I'll just focus on one piece. But putting like a big show together, they're usually all in this same state of nonsense until the very last week. So we are approaching that week right now.
And the majority of the work that you make is in acrylics. What is it that you like about acrylics opposed to like oil gouache?
I am a terrible procrastinator. Maybe not even procrastinate. It takes a long time to like find the confidence on what I want to paint. By the time I have it, there's not a ton of time to do the actual painting. And the idea of sitting around and waiting things to dry, in the case of oils, is like, it's not an option. Even with dryers, and I to the point where I'm there with a heat gun drying it because it needs to dry faster, And I like painting on wood with acrylics because I could kind of beat it up a little bit, even though the end result and kind of ends up looking pretty polished and smooth. The process is a mess, it's just a lot of like sanding and scraping. And then, yeah. So canvas is always just too, I don't know, pliable. It like gives too much. I need something I can like rest my hand on and smack around when I'm not happy with what's happening.
Are there any mediums that you'd like to explore someday that maybe you haven't had an opportunity to?
Yeah, I do like oils. I would like to try to give it a shot again. I like went to art classes when I was in 11 or something. I remember painting with oils, and even in art school. But since then I have not messed with it. But my friends who are oil painters, I'll kind of mess around with theirs a little bit. I would like to go back into that, but as far as anything else, like in my actual work, I don't know if there's a place for it. Gouache is great. Watercolor is incredibly frustrating. I have been using like spray paint and airbrushing a lot for big fills. And like larger pieces, like as of all of a week ago. And I think there's something interesting there. Like airbrushing is kind of frowned upon. So I don't know if people are going to be into like a fully airbrush painting, but for putting down big fields of color, it's definitely a lot faster. So.
And you have done, a handful of public art pieces like mural, large scale murals. And I think that your first mural was in 2013 as part of a Las Vegas backyard wall project. So I guess tell me about that. Like, how did you first get into mural painting?
Yeah, that one was, it was some friends that live kind of in the same neighborhood, built a big back wall of, 8 by 20 feet. That they would just have artists come over and paint, and they would do time-lapse photography and make a little video, have some friends put some music. That was just for fun, and it was a lot of fun. They would have these big parties for it, and those were pretty wild. The other murals, there was the Soto Track mural that I did with artist Sid B up in Seattle. And Gage Hamilton put that together with artists like all over the world. Where did this corridor that is downtown or south of downtown. That's what they call Soto. And all the murals are facing the train, and it's kind of like this outdoor gallery. And that's great. That was trial by fire because it was 20 feet by 60 feet or something. Yeah. So that was, I've never been on a boom or any of that before. And we were using house paints like idiots. And, yeah.
So do you not use spray paint when you're doing these?
No, I haven't. I just don't have a command over it that I'm like comfortable with. In theory, like I could use them for big, fields of color, but like, so you can use house paint for that too, and it'll probably be faster and cheaper. So I don't know. Over the summer, my parents live out in the wilderness, and I set up this like 8x8 canvas to try to practice. But yeah, I haven't gotten over that hump of frustration of like, oh, this isn't doing what I wanted to do. So it's not something I want to go into like a mural festival where you have a very, short span of time that there's no time for messing around. So, yeah.
I guess besides the painting process itself, do you approach the compositions of the works differently when it's for a large scale like wall like that?
No, I just don't have a lot of experience with it. I have like the utmost respect for people that, can bang those out and look amazing, but it's really hard for me, working on that Soto Track one. I was up on a boom, 20 feet in the air painting a cloud that like no one's gonna, what are you doing, dude? You've been working on that cloud for like 20 minutes and it's like a speck on this. So I have to keep remembering that. I have the same problem when I'm painting smaller pieces, is that I'm like rendering out flower petals that like, dude, no one's gonna look at. Like there's no point. So yeah, I would like to paint more murals. I am not very great at it, so I need to get a little bit more experience under the belt there.
Right on. So let's talk about your new show. It's at Think Space, titled Tacit Turnabout, and I believe by the time that this episode comes out, it'll have been open for about a week, and remains open through April 23rd. So what can you tell me about this new body of work?
Yeah, I haven't been creating much, in between COVID and all the things that were going on in the last 2 years, and then like personal like health issues. I haven't been working, and I haven't really felt inspired to work. And this show was originally supposed to be in a year ago. And I had surprise brain, I had a craniotomy for like a subdural hematoma. And that kind of like messed me up for a while. And, and it was clear then we had to like postpone the show. And so it's kind of been trying to but try to like re-inspire myself to, get something down, something that I want to say. And so a lot of it's kind of based on some of the trials and tribulations that my friends have been going through for the last couple of years. I mean, some of it to do with isolation, and a lot of it just kind of interpersonal relationships that are I just talk to them about it naturally as a friend, but like, oh, what if you can put that on a canvas somehow without it being heavy-handed, and again try to be something pleasurable to look at to some degree.
For sure. And so I guess as you were developing the theme for the show, and I guess just your shows in general, do you tend to develop the theme first and then kind of work within the boundaries of that idea, or do you just start working and let the themes kind of organically?
Yeah, exactly. There's rarely, I don't think there's ever been like an overall like theme. The shows are just kind of more small groupings of ideas that I've had, and I think my natural state of mind will come out with the work that is created over the same period of time. I think it'll just come out somewhere or the other, but as far as like the actual planning process, it's more of just, again, trying to find those ideas or those punchlines or those kind of like, wouldn't it be trippy if this was this? And trying to make those happen.
Is there a particular piece in the show that challenged you more than maybe some of the other ones? They've
all, and like even the ones I thought were going to be easy, it was just like, what am I doing? Because I've been trying to hide these like little tiny things where it's like the freckles on the woman, or I did a piece of a woman wearing just a ton of lover's eye lockets. So I'm like, now I'm painting 40 pieces of jewelry, and the eyes have to look like eyes. They can't be like badly painted. Right. So that was a dumb idea. Working on a piece of a girl that's kind of pulling apart a beaded curtain, but the beaded curtain is the phases of the moons. So like just the idea of like paint a beaded curtain, like that's a dumb idea, man. So, and it's a big painting, so they have to,
It's like, what did I get myself into, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think technically it's fun. And it's not something that you're struggling over the look at, like, oh, that's not looking at it. It's just, just a lot of work. So, the other struggles have come in just like, wow, I put all of this work into this dumb idea and it doesn't look right. So now I got to do it again. And, there's been a lot of that. So
Has there? You mentioned having kind of taken some time off. Do you think that how was that experience, kind of easing yourself back into your routine?
It's been hard. I think I'm naturally just like a really lazy person, so it's really easy to like not work. I mean, but you have to, and like, the show's 6 months away. Don't worry about it. The show's 5 months away. Maybe, start doing some. It's 4 months away, man. Like ghetto. Yeah. So the last 4 or 5 months have been nonstop. But I mean, while I was working a little bit more sporadically before, now it's like it's nonstop.
How many pieces are there going to be total?
Like just as many as I can. Yeah, I never feel like it's enough. It probably never is enough. I start these I'll start them like some of these are started a year and a half ago or something, and they're just sitting there. They've been in the same state for 9 months, and they need like one more day's worth of work, but I refuse to do it. And I refuse until the very last second. And yeah. So I'm aiming for 30.
Wow, that's big. It's huge.
A third of that are going to be some small pieces, but like, I'm trying to kind of change my colors as far as past shows have gone. Like I do want to have like a good looking show, but I also want to have it filled, and I think Space is a big gallery. So yeah.
Well, now with their new space, I think their main floor is even bigger. So
it's gigantic.
Yeah. Were you, I guess, did you have that in mind as far as how you were going to lay the show out?
When I first started, yeah. Like all the pieces are definitely much larger than what I'm comfortable at working at normally. And yeah, thankfully I'm sharing it with Dovey. So it's going to be half and half. So that's a good move. While I could have filled that gallery, it would be very, sparse, or it would just be spaced apart a little bit more. So yeah, I've been pushing myself to do larger pieces, but when I originally thought like, yeah, do them big, do them loose, and again that problem comes up is like I can't stop like rendering these tiny little minute details that no one gives a shit about. So yeah, been struggling with that. So
sure. Are you going to be attending the opening?
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. I guess, how do you feel about show openings in the age of COVID? Like, how are you feeling about it?
I've been to a couple recently. Yeah, I mean, Nevada, COVID's been over for a year out here. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, trips I've been to California and Seattle. I know the whole West Coast is definitely a little bit, but like, I think it'll be all right. I don't know. I can't fault for anyone not wanting to come out because of whatever reasons, but God, everyone I know has already had it at least once. So yeah, I hope people can come out, but I'll totally understand if they don't.
I guess anything else that you have coming up that you'd want to put on people's radars, events, print releases, stuff like that?
No, this has been pretty much the sole focus. I mean, I make these crazy gigantic enamel pins with a company called Almost Amusing, and we're going to do some more coming up soon. And I am weirdly getting into ceramics from a friend. Oh, yeah? We have like a art night every Thursday, and he's just he's got the whole kiln and everything. So I'm going to make something weird, maybe some cat ashtrays.
Nice. So I guess how do you feel? And you've done toy vinyl figure in the past, your kitty pillar figure. I guess how do you feel that your work translates to 3 dimensions in general? Is it something you'd like to explore more of?
Yeah, it's kind of hard again because like I'm making these paintings with I'm trying to build this like environment. So then to come up with one object isn't always, I mean, the kitty pillar is pretty easy because that was just the dumb pun that the painting was. The pins have been like, trying to find that one part of the painting. And so, the ashtray or the ceramics, I'm really dead set on this ashtray idea. I think that's going to be more of just like looking at past like antiques and trying to put my own spin on them rather than trying to take something from my work and recreating them. But who knows? I don't know. It's just kind of fun to play around with, and shit will break half the time anyway. So
very cool. So I guess where can people find you online so they can stay up to date with all this new stuff you got?
Just Instagram at Casey Weldon. And that's pretty much it. The website's very sparse.
All right. I guess last question, and this is something that I like to ask everybody. Who is one artist that you'd like to see me have on the show?
I was thinking about this, but I have like 5 answers. Is that all right? Short list. Okay. At least 2. I think you should have Kirsten from Rock LaRue on here. She's awesome. If you're doing, gallery curators, artists, I was going to say Amy Soul, but she will say that she's too shy and won't do it. Or maybe, hopefully she will. She's awesome. But and she's really easy to talk to. Really sweet person. But then, so the people you should ask is Carlise Alexander and Red Walitsky are 2 amazing painters that have started a company together, and they've kind of like changed their whole career through this new joint venture. And I think they're both incredibly interesting people in their own right. But I really like, I think it'd be a change of topic to, as far as artists not always having to paint things for the rest of their lives kind of thing. So
nice. No, I didn't realize they'd gotten into something together. That's really cool. I mean, I'm familiar with their work independently, but I didn't realize they were. So
it's called Moth and Myth. And like anytime I tell this to someone, they're like, huh? They laser cut moth wings, and they come in like these packages you can and it's blown up, it's like they have this whole factory. They bought their own laser cutters and printers that are just insane. It was on Martha Stewart. Like, what the heck? So it's really, I cannot be happier for him. Red's like currently like riding across Central America, Indian or Himalayan, right? I can't remember. And it's like just allowed them to kind of be more comfortable as artists. I think it's great.
Very cool. Great suggestions. And Casey, thank you so much for doing the show, man. This has really been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you suffering through my rambling.
All right, sweet. So we'll cut there. So that's it for this episode of Art Affairs. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Casey. I really enjoy the way that he uses color in his work, and it was really interesting to see how his use of color evolved over the years. But it was also neat to hear how his current journey with colors really started with him recognizing that he was using way too many, and wanting to limit his palette and put constraints on the number of colors that he uses. That, coupled with a love for dramatic lighting, has yielded a style entirely his own. Casey's new show at ThinkSpace sounds pretty rad. Like I mentioned during the chat, we're recording this a couple weeks before the show opens, so I haven't seen all the pieces, but from what he described, it seems like it's going to be a killer new body of work. I was sorry to hear that he'd been dealing with some medical issues and just a general lack of inspiration. But with 30 new pieces for the show, it at least seems like things are on the up and up. And by the time you hear this, the show will already be open at ThinkSpace and will remain on display through April 23rd. So definitely drop by the gallery to check out all the works, or see the show on ThinkSpace's website if you're not in the area. So thanks again to Casey for joining me today, And thank you for checking out the show. I'm truly grateful for your support. And just a reminder, one big way you could help out if you're really enjoying the show would be to check out the show's Patreon. You can find all the details on patreon.com/artaffairs. And as always, you can contact me through my website at artaffairs.podcast.com or on Instagram at artaffairs.podcast. So until next time, be good to yourself and be good to each other.